Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to today's webinar. We are here to talk all about getting started with Trustworthy. We are joined by Nat Robinson and Kyle Adamo, and they are going to do a very thorough walkthrough of all things Trustworthy to help you get started and help you make the most of your family operating system. My name is Taylor. I'm here to help guide the question and answer portion. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Nat to get us started.
Thanks, Taylor. Hi, everyone. Good morning, or good, yeah, I guess good morning, pretty much. We're coming to you live this morning, as you might have guessed, because we want to, do the session live and answer all your questions that you might have, and hopefully give you some tips and tricks as you think about, adopting Trustworthy for Family, or if you've already adopted it and you want to make progress quickly. We're going to cover all the big questions that folks normally give us, and I'll give you a quick intro, and then I'll hand over to Kyle for the demo component. But hopefully you'll have lots of questions as we go through, and we'll talk about how to get your family set up and secure and prepared and trustworthy. The catalyst for building Trustworthy was really this generational shift that we've seen over the last 25, 30 years. We used to have a relatively simple set of things to manage across our lives, a bank account, a mortgage, a phone line, pretty simple things. And then in the last generation, last 25, 30 years, we've seen this massive, basically 100x increase in the number of things that we have to manage across the household. And in talking to families, we hear this phrase again and again: it's all over the place. I'm worried I'm going to lose track of something, one of these bits and pieces, one of these accounts, one of these logins, and I worry that if something happened to me, my family just wouldn't know where to go to find all the bits and pieces, that something's going to get lost. So you can see this long list here. It's even longer than we could fit on the slide. And that amount of information that we all have to deal with is increasing. It's not going away with the advent of AI. The things that get created are magnifying, and it's getting easier to create more information that we need to keep track of. And what we'd seen was that there are actually material problems associated with this sort of information bloat, information overload, that families are now spending a lot of time trying to stay on top of household paperwork and all the related critical tasks. That's a fairly conservative estimate in terms of the number of hours per year. And this crazy number, almost $1,300 a year in these insipid fees that creep in. These are the little bits and pieces of late fees and penalties and impact to your credit score. This number keeps going up. It's just almost $1,300. That's crazy. And then, of course, the sort of mental load, the anxiety that comes along. 84% of people reporting anxiety about staying on top of things across their household. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But when we looked at what people were doing, almost everyone had some kind of DIY system, from pretty basic, like I have a stack of papers on my desk, to beautifully elaborately built systems that high net worth folks had their assistants build, and that there was a whole spectrum and range of those things, but none of them were really purpose built for the task. And here's what that means. It means, like, if you use something like a Google Doc, it starts with a blank page. There's no help or guidance to tell you what to put in there. You have to build it all yourself from scratch. There's no assistance. You have to maintain it all yourself as things change across your household. Those productivity tools are essentially what we call dumb containers. They don't have any context or understanding of the information that you're putting in them. They can't offer anything back in return. A big one, they don't handle what we think of as temporal sharing, meaning I built this document, has all the useful information, but don't look at pages 9 and 10, or don't look at rows 30 through 36. That's for later. I don't want to share that information just now. And this is a really important consideration when you consider family dynamics and family estates. I don't necessarily want you to know everything up front or right away. I might want to share some of this information over time. So that's a big one. They had questionable security. Of course, if the tool is free, you wonder, are you the product? Is your information the product? What are you getting in that return for an exchange, or what are they taking? They didn't really offer any service or other than maybe a knowledge base or help, like a help line maybe if you're lucky. And they just weren't purpose built. So we said, look, couldn't we help families get further faster with a purpose built system that handles all these scenarios, offers guidance, offers help, handles all the different ways that families want to share information across their ecosystem. And that's how we ended up with the Family Operating System. The big use cases that we'd seen across households were, I'm just looking for a bit of information. I need a system that has it all in one place that I can go to and get something really quickly. I don't want to have to wait to go back home and look through whatever system I have, maybe some paper-based systems. I need it right now. I need the VIN number for the car. That's a long set of digits and numbers that I can never remember. I need my kids' social security numbers. I need my spouse's driver's license. I'm trying to get something done. How do I get that information to where it needs to go in the moment that I need to get it done? That was a huge use case. Instead of a day-to-day, I just need a bit of information use case. Big one. Number two was, if something happens to me or happens to us, will our family, our extended family, know where to go to find the treasure map? This great metaphor for Trustworthy. Is like, it's kind of the treasure map to where everything lives. Doesn't all have to be in Trustworthy. You might have bits and pieces in other places, but there are pointers to those places in Trustworthy. So it's sort of a map to your household to all those important things. Obviously, that's a big one. Thinking about legacy, estate planning. How do I create this map of my world so that other folks can follow that map? And there's a funny story that we tell. One of our early customers was a retired Navy captain who actually had precious metals buried on his property somewhere. And we said, okay, you're in the Navy, you have a chest full of precious metals. Are you a pirate? And he said, no. And we said, does your family know where to go to find all the loot that you have? Bitwarden and he's like, yeah, I think they know. I was like, okay, great. So that sort of became the metaphor for Trustworthy. Is like, oh, it's this great treasure map to all the things that's in a secure place. This other one that emerged, because so many of our members are sort of Gen X and now millennials, they're also thinking about their parents. I love having Trustworthy for my information, for my household, but what about my parents? What about my in-laws? What about my other family members? Their timeline feels even more urgent because we know that inevitable estate transition is coming up. Maybe mom or dad has some health issues, maybe some cognitive decline. We hear a lot of these stories. How do we get ahead of this inevitable problem so that that estate is dialed in as well? So that's this other use case that's emerged. And sort of, you can think of it as a life moment. We have lots of life moments where people think about something like Trustworthy, getting married, having a child, having a baby, getting divorced, retiring, traveling, taking a trip. There are lots of moments where it occurs to people, how do I make sure that I'm sufficiently prepared for all these moments across life? These are the big use cases. We see Trustworthy being used in sort of probate use cases where someone has passed away and you're trying to collect all that information across the estate. Trustworthy is great for that. We can have multiple collaborators, maybe some attorneys and family members, all having access to the same information. And then for folks who are part of this movement around household equity, meaning we want to make sure that everyone in the household who's an adult has sufficient access to the information. There's a black box on this side of the household, there's a black box on that. How do we bring that whole picture together so that everyone has equity in knowing where things are? Okay, some bigger tailwinds that are driving people to think about things like Trustworthy to build a family operating system. Things becoming digital first or digital only. We saw this accelerate through the pandemic where people were forced into having to do everything digitally. I can't go out, I can't meet people in person, I can't have those interactions. Great, we have to do meetings and calls and everything else online. This accelerated. It was already happening, it accelerated. So increasingly things arrive in your inbox rather than the mailbox. Increasingly, we have meetings like this rather than going to a conference center. So that's a big part of what's happening, a big societal impact. The other one, or one of the next ones, is this wealth transfer, something like 90 trillion in assets from the baby boomer generation, the wealthiest generation right now, obviously passing to subsequent generations as they retire, and the estates transition over the next 10, 20 years. That's having a massive impact on society and people thinking about how that happens. Climate change, I think just even this year, my goodness, floods, fires, so many climate change related disasters that are happening and impacting communities. People thinking about these and wanting to get ahead of those tornadoes, hurricanes coming up season. How do I get ahead of that and make sure that my information is backed up where I need it in a safe place? And then we touched on mental health, but not the number one healthcare concern across the United States today. How do I reduce anxiety? How do I increase peace of mind? Trustworthy can really help with this. Okay, so enough for me. I'm going to hand over to Kyle, and we're going to walk you through the system and offer some tips and tricks for getting up and running with Trustworthy quickly. Just a reminder, if you have questions, hit the grid button in the bottom right corner of your screen, and then select Q&A, and we'd love to answer your questions as we go, or maybe towards the end.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to take us through sort of a brand new account in Trustworthy and what it looks like to get up and running and explain some key concepts. We're going to touch on the web app and the mobile app as well. The mobile app's available on iOS and Android. I'll show you a couple ways to quickly go and download that. Let me start on the web app, and there's a couple of key concepts I want to draw your attention to. This is a brand new account for me. The only thing I've done on this account so far is to do my MFA. That's your multi-factor authentication. We let you get into Trustworthy to explore around, but certain tasks are going to require you to set up MFA. That's an added level of security, like receiving a code over SMS or using an authenticator app. Those are options for to make your account more secure. As soon as you go to add any sort of PII, it's going to prompt you for MFA before you can do that. So that's like uploading a file, entering an account number, things like that. So I've done that MFA step, so it's out of the way. I uploaded a profile picture of my demo account owner, and that's about it. On your dashboard, there's a couple of key concepts that we're pushing you towards in this quick start area. These are tasks that help you discover some of the features and functionality in Trustworthy and key first steps that are good to sort of embark on. If you click on any of these items, it'll launch a tour to point you to where you should go to experience that item, whether it's adding finance or adding insurance. All of these things are will guide you through those different steps. One other concept I want to explain as we go through some of these, let me click onto one of these categories to explain something else that we do in Trustworthy. It's this idea of pre-populated tiles. So because I signed up as David Reynolds, what it did is it created placeholder tiles for me for things that I probably have, so that you're not staring at a blank page, so that you don't have to think about, okay, what do I put in this category? We're going to give you examples. And in any of these tiles, you can click through, fill in some of the fields, and sort of take over that tile, like accept that I'm going to use it. If it's something that you don't have, if you're lucky enough to not have a credit card, you can just delete these tiles, okay? And we will create more of those pre-populated tiles as you add additional family members to your household. So let's talk about adding family members to your household, and then I'll explain kind of why that's important. Right now, I'm set up, only David Reynolds has access to the account. I'm going to set up some other family members. This doesn't necessarily mean they have access to the account. You'll get a chance to invite them through what's called collaboration, and I'll show you that as well. So I'm going to click on one of these steps called Set Up Your Household, and it points me to this Family IDs category. I'm going to go over there, and essentially you'll see David Reynolds in here and a placeholder tile for a pet. I'm going to go and add my wife, and I'm going to add a kid as well here. And all you need to do is say, click on this new family item, and I'm going to do Laura. So you can put in that basic info. If you happen to have a profile picture, it helps to personalize the system. You can always add this profile later. I'm going to drop one in now. I happen to have an image ready. So I'm going to do create family ID. Notice this little hint here. What it's going to do is, if you remember those pre-populated tiles, it's going to create some more for Laura. Here's a placeholder for a savings account, a vehicle, a student loan, whatever it might be. It's going to create some of these placeholders just to get you started. Okay, so it's going off. It's creating those tiles now.
Yeah, one of the reasons we create these tiles is we found that it's much better to give people something to react to than just to have a blank page, right? We never want you starting at a blank page. These tiles are recommendations based on your family makeup, things we think you probably have. But if you don't have them, you can dismiss them and create your own. It's just easier to have something to react to and say, oh yeah, we do have one of those. And we hear time and again, like how helpful they are and how much people like them. Like, oh, that's super helpful to get me started quickly.
So I've added a couple family members in here, and this is important. These are the people whose data I'm going to be tracking inside Trustworthy. I don't want to leave this till the end. I'm going to talk about collaboration now. One thing that we've seen with people is when they're getting started with Trustworthy, especially when it comes to involving a spouse or most trusted loved one, they have this desire to get everything perfect in Trustworthy and fully organized before I invite someone in. I say invite people early into your account, people who can help you get it set up. As Nat said, there's sometimes like a bifurcation of who knows and understands the data in the household. In my case, when I was setting up Trustworthy and I invited my wife, suddenly I'm like, oh, here's her bank accounts that I never knew about. And they're in the system. These were ones because we had these as adults before we got together and they never really crossed paths, but now they're all in one place. So if something happens to one of us, we'll know essentially what the treasure map holds. So let's talk about collaboration for a minute. Under your account menu, there's a lot of goodies here under the account menu, different settings and different things that we'll explore later. But I want to touch on manage access. And manage access is where you can start to invite people into your account and determine what preference or privileges that they have in there. So if it's someone like your wife, or your spouse, or a loved one, you can just, if they're in there as a family member, you can just select them, specify their email address. Not actually going to send this one right now. And then there's a critical consideration here. Typically for someone like a spouse or most trusted loved one, you might grant them full access. That means they have access to everything in Trustworthy. If you're inviting someone else that's more of an advisor, let's say it's a wealth advisor, it's a CPA, maybe a tax consultant, you can scope their access when you invite them into your account. And you can configure this access to say, you know what, my CPA is going to come and they're going to have finance and they're going to have taxes, and that's it. You can get even more granular, perhaps, if you wanted to do, okay, they're going to have access to my business category, but only, actually, this isn't a good example because I don't have any set up. Let me do this one. They might have access to a category, but they only have access to Emily Reynolds, let's say, or to this business or to this insurance policy. So you can, where I see this get used lots is, let's say you have adult children who are away at college and you want them to have access to some things, but not a lot of things. You might share specifically this credit card, this bank account, this vehicle insurance, this student loan. You can really be selective and sort of curate a list of things that they'll have access to. There's one other concept that I just want to point out here. It's that of legacy access. Legacy access is someone who does not have access to anything in Trustworthy now. We send a light verification to them to make sure they're reachable via email. These are people who might get elevated access to your account in the event of something happening to you. One thing that I always say is, like, if you're prepping for like an end of life scenario or settling an estate scenario, having all your data organized in Trustworthy is not really useful unless someone knows it's in Trustworthy. So invite collaborators, invite legacy access people, let them know that here's this system, and if something were to happen to me, they can get elevated access. There's a whole process that we'll go through that they'll get explained to them when they get the email invites and whatnot. Okay, and we can dig into that a bit more. All that functionality of inviting collaborators will be available on mobile as well. Let me go back to my dashboard. Because I added my family member, that task is done on my dashboard. What I want to get into now is, like, where do you start? And typically people start with files. I'm going to start to upload files into Trustworthy. And that's a good way to sort of see how Trustworthy works and how there's like a layer called Autopilot that can help you get organized. And we're going to touch on, half a dozen ways that you can get data into Trustworthy. First, I'm going to start with just dragging some files that I already have in my system. So I'm going to click on this task, add your first files, just to see what it tells me. And essentially it's saying you can drag stuff into your dashboard here, and then it's going to sort of take you to the next step when I do this. So let me start with something simple. I'm going to drag a passport file, and you don't have to drag. You can click browse and explore your drives or a thumb drive or wherever you might have it. I've got another screen open where I'm just going to drag this file over. This one's a passport. And what it's going to do is Autopilot analyzes this file, and it's going to try and determine what to do with it. And it'll do that with most files that you upload. It's going to try and come up with a plan. It puts it in this place called the inbox, and the inbox is a great queue to just like dump stuff in. Almost everything that you send to Trustworthy through these various means will land in this inbox. It's going to come up with a plan as to what to do with it. Oftentimes when I see people getting started with Trustworthy, they go through various phases. The first phase is curation. Let me go get my files and let me just send them all into Trustworthy and get them secured. And then I'm going to put on my organization hat and I'm going to go file these into the right spots, because we want to get everything into the right spot so that you can find stuff easily later. So let me just show you what's happened here. We've analyzed this file. We know a lot about the file, and if it's a really rich file like an insurance policy, we'll know even more facts about it. The other thing that we do when we analyze a file is we analyze everything inside Trustworthy to determine, have we seen this before? Do you already have a spot to put this? If not, let's create a spot. I'll show you all these things. In this case, because David Reynolds already exists as a family ID in here, there's a page dedicated to IDs for David Reynolds. It's giving me a link to go open that page. And then my goal here is to drag this file to the spot. Typically there's a spot for the file, or we'll talk about how you can use like this. There's like this whole section at the bottom of every page called folders or files, where you can create additional folders. I'll show you that as well. In this case, I just want to move this passport out of my inbox, and I'm going to go drag it over here to this passport area. And what it's going to do is going to extract data from that file that it found to help populate these fields. So you can review the stuff that's in there, you can accept it, and a couple things happen here. It stores that info on the passport to make this searchable for later, and it's also created a reminder to renew this passport. And we're going to circulate these reminders by email and shortly, hopefully push notifications as well. But these are designed to keep you on top of these tasks that you don't often remember those dates, and it's going to circulate these reminders well in advance to make sure you're on top of things. Okay, you don't always have to go through the inbox and send stuff there. If you're looking at a page and you're like, oh, I need to put my driver's license in here. Let me go over to Laura Reynolds' page, for example. I've got files for her. You can just drag them straight to these spots. So I've got a driver's license for Laura. Same thing's going to happen. Autopilot's going to renew or review these files. With ID cards, you can actually put the back of ID cards too. In some circumstances, that's very helpful to have the back. I know that when I recently did a mortgage refinance, and within that transaction, it felt like there was like a dozen people who are like, I need your front and back of your ID. I'll show you how you can share that stuff really, really easily. So if any Autopilot stuff comes up, you can just accept it or review it, and it's going to populate where it can. It creates a reminder for the license renewal. While I'm in here, I want to talk about a feature while we're looking at these files, to talk about these life moments like a refinance. Any file within Trustworthy you can share securely, temporarily. IDs are probably the place where we see those get shared most, particularly your driver's license for certain like loan applications, or maybe it's a refinance. One thing that you can do with any file in Trustworthy is you can click on the thumbnail to preview it. And when you're in the preview page, there's a share button up in the top right. And this will allow me to generate a link. Okay, I'm just going to go through this. And then this link can be an expired link, so that you can say, okay, I'm working with my broker right now. They need some details for my license. I'm going to share this link with them. I can copy this link, email it, text it to my broker. They can access that file temporarily. They'll be able to get to the front and back of the license. Oftentimes they'll need both sides of that. And this is like, it's not the solution to every data privacy issue, but it's an incremental step improvement for a lot of people who would typically snap a photo. That photo goes into your Google photo reel or Apple photo reel. And then they'll attach it to an email and send it to the broker where it's going to sit in that person's inbox forever. So this is like a good temporal way or a good way to just temporarily share this file. You'll get an email notification when they click the link. You can always go force the link to expire early if you want, but you'll also get a notification once the link gets expired.
That was a good segue because Robert Johnson in our chat had a question around that. Am I able to share files with restricted access for non-family members? And that's the way to do it, correct?
Yeah, through secure links, that's a good way to do it. You can share any file in Trustworthy in the same way. You just need to click on it to preview it. Once you've previewed it, then you can share and you can determine, how long you want that to be available for.
Perfect.
Okay. I'm going to move a few more files in here so you can see some other options that happen when you drag files in. And this will help me touch on one of the files I'm going to bring will help me touch on the idea of creating folders inside a page. So let me do this. I'm going to grab how about a vehicle registration. Let me do a bank statement. And so I'm pulling 3 more files in here. One is a bank statement, one is a vehicle registration, and the other is, I don't know, what could it be? Sometimes you get these files I get this from my lawyer. It's always like sent from Xerox or sent from Brother Scanner. Not a great file name. I'll show you something that we do to help with improving these file names. So as those files go in, we're analyzing them. You might go off, if you're in sort of curation mode, you might go off, find more files, drag them in or email them in. I'll show you that in a minute. While you're off curating, Autopilot's analyzing these to come up with a plan as to what to do with them. Here's a good example. This sent from Xerox. We know what this is now. We've analyzed it. We can recommend a better file name. And file names are important just for if it's not you who's browsing these, if you've invited a spouse and they're looking at this file, having a decent file name is helpful for clarity and understanding what these things are. It also makes it more searchable in the end. If you want to search for the term closing disclosure, it's going to be a lot easier to find if it's named that. So anytime you see a suggested file name, if it looks like it's good, you can accept it. Okay, and it's got a lot of details about the home that it knows. It'll follow this. These details will follow this file around wherever it goes. We always write a summary that sticks with the file wherever you move this file, just so you can get a high-level summary of things. For really long, detailed documents, this is a great thing. But it's telling me something here where it's saying, we've never seen this real estate property before. You should add a new page in the property real estate category to store this, create a new profile for this home. So I can click Add. And this is where I want to talk about folders. Some pages, property is a good example. There's no obvious spot to move this file to, like the passport, or when we get to insurance, you'll see that there's a spot for the policy, or when we get to vehicles, you'll see a spot for the vehicle registration. When it comes to real estate, there's no block where, I must drag this file there. This is where you can start to use folders. And every page that you have in Trustworthy has a section called Files. It's like a generic catch-all for any files that you want to store related to this home. But you can create custom named folders in here for very specific sort of contextual storage of files. So maybe you have a folder called Closing Docs. Okay, maybe you have another folder called Utility Bills. Maybe you have another one called Contractor Receipts for any sort of home rentals that you're doing. You can create these different folders. And once you drag a file into these folders, it's still going to do the autofill business that we saw before, where it's going to try and detect things, and it's going to put stuff up at the top where it said, okay, we found some stuff from this document. We can help you fill in some of these fields, and you can do accept all, and it's going to populate some of these items. So it's linked it up to Laura and David, who are members of your family and the family IDs. Populated the address, and then in the future there'll be more and more stuff that gets filled as we sort of refine handling of these different files.
Kyle, I think it's worth mentioning at this point, a question we get often is, how much work is this? And I think what you're seeing here and what you're going to see in the next steps is it's with Autopilot, it's really easy that I don't have to type in a lot of stuff here. I'm not having to enter all the details. I can just share documents as I have them, as I get them, as they arrive. Just got a question about mobile. We'll touch on that in a second, I'm sure. But this idea of like how easy is this is with Autopilot. It's really easy. You just have to share those documents. There's lots of ways to share them. Autopilot does all sort of the translation, and it's building your household data graph in the background and mapping this all for you. But also, you're not having to type things in. And I think you're going to show the title change in a second, creating these summaries. Like, we make it really easy for you, almost automatic. The other tip here is, of course, you don't have to do it yourself. You should invite your partner or spouse. You should invite your accountant. You should invite your wealth advisor. You should invite all the folks you already work with who have access to information, who can upload statements, who can do other things on your behalf. We make it easy for you, but you can also make it easy for yourself. My accountant uploads my tax returns, or across, I first invited him, he uploaded a bunch of tax returns. Now I collect information all year long as it arrives in for the tax year. He has access to that tax year. When it's ready to file, he just grabs those files out of Trustworthy, and when they're done, he uploads my completed tax return. So collaborating across the folks that you already collaborate with will make it even easier. Autopilot makes it easy, but that old adage of many hands makes light work. There's a way to federate this out and collaborate and have the system build itself or build itself for you. So I think that's an interesting tip that we've all experienced in building our family operating systems, and wanted to pass that on.
Yeah, let me do this vehicle, and then I'll jump to mobile next, and we'll talk about using mobile to scan items into Trustworthy, because it's a huge part of how people get organized. This was a vehicle registration. It knows that, hey, we've never seen this vehicle in Trustworthy. You should create a new page inside property vehicle category, and those are spots specifically for your registration. So it creates this blank page. My job, again, drag it out of your inbox to the appropriate spot. It's going to autofill what it can. In this case, almost everything gets filled. So it's got all these details about my vehicle. It links it up to David Reynolds. And now my vehicle's in there. It's created a reminder. My registration image is a bit old, so this reminder is already expired, but it creates this reminder. And that vehicle is now in there. And if I look at my property category, I've got my real estate item, I've got that Toyota Sienna, I've got a bunch of the pre-populated tiles. So I'm getting there. It's starting to help me organize things. But let's talk about mobile for a minute. One of the items you'll see on your dashboard, I already logged in on mobile. Typically there's a card that says download the mobile app. And when you open it up, there's a QR code for Android and iOS. So we're on both of those different app stores. And once you have the app downloaded on your device, there'll be like a Face ID component that makes sure it's convenient yet secure to get in. You can open the app. It'll ask for a Face ID or a biometric of some kind, which could be a fingerprint. You cannot install the app unless you have a biometric on your device or a PIN code on your device. I've seen some people who have no security on their device. You just open it up and suddenly everything's there. Trustworthy is not going to run in that environment. It's not going to be secure. So you got to make sure that you have those things on your device. And what I want to show you, you see the same sort of items here. There's a getting started checklist that once you're done these items, they'll disappear. You can access your inbox, see reminders, but see this plus button down at the bottom. This is like the gateway to getting data into Trustworthy, and there's a bunch of different options here. Scan document is something I use pretty heavily, and it's a great way to get stuff into Trustworthy. So if I just hit scan document, I point at a file here. I have a insurance declarations page. I can save this now. If I have a multi-page document, I can just switch to the next page, scan the next page. But it's going to take this file, and it's already secured it in my inbox. It's uploaded it to Trustworthy. If I wanted to leave or close the app, I could. It'll still be in my inbox. But it's also going to do what you saw in the web app, where it's going to try and come up with a suggestion. So it's created a suggestion at the top. If there's another place you want to file it, you can use these categories to explore where you want to put it. But in this case, I'm just going to follow through on this suggestion. What I'm going to do is click on this plus button to add a new tile. because it's never seen this insurance policy before. I'm going to pick the spot where I want to store it. We have a spot specifically for the policy document. I'm going to put it there and click attach. And then it's going to do a couple things here. It stores the file, but it also gives me these autopilot items as well, where it's going to link this up to people, vehicles, whatever it might be, and you can select and autofill those, and it's going to populate everything. One thing to remember, on any of the pages, there's like a nickname at the top that gets created. Right now, mine says new auto insurance. I mean, this bold item here. You can always, on the web app or the mobile app, you can always backspace that, and you can put in some new item. On mobile, I don't like typing, so I use my voice. Geico Auto Insurance. Okay, so that's in there now, and all I did was scan. And what's also nice about mobile, while I'm here, I just want to talk about is search. You have search in the web app, you have search in the mobile app, but search is a huge part of finding things when you need them. There was a time where I was at the DMV, and get to the front of the line. They're like, "We need your VIN number," and I didn't have that because I don't know it. But it was in Trustworthy, so I could just open up my search and do something like VIN number, and it's going to go off and find the things that might have a VIN number, like my Sienna, and then from there I can grab my VIN number, which is on here. So search is a huge part. We see a lot of searches on mobile. You can take your Trustworthy with you on the go, and you can get access to things everywhere. Let's talk about one more way to get data into Trustworthy, and then we have a lot of questions. We should probably jump into some of those. One thing Nat had mentioned is like the digital transformation. So much stuff is no longer paper anymore. You're getting tons of things into your email. We know this. I get all sorts of stuff into my email. We polled our clients, and it was like 90-some% get critical household documents in their email. You can forward items into Trustworthy, and here's how that works. Luckily, there's a getting started or a quick start task here that tells you, hey, you can email files to Trustworthy. If I click on that, it's going to share with me an email address that I can use. And here's what I usually recommend to people. This is a complicated enough email address. You're not going to remember it. You can copy this and set it up as a contact in whatever ecosystem you work in. I'm a Google person, so I'm going to add it as a Google contact. If you're, an Apple person, you might add it as an Apple contact. If you're Microsoft, maybe an Outlook contact. And here's how you do that. Let me go into Google Contacts. I'm going to create a new contact. Let's call this August webinar. I'm going to put this email address in here. And the reason having them in your contacts is useful, when you access your email and you want to forward something, the to field will be a list of known contacts typically. And whether you're on mobile or on desktop and you're forwarding that email, you'll see this contact and you'll easily be able to send stuff to it. So let's say I've insurance broker sent me a couple life insurance policies. All I need to do now is forward these, type in my, where's my August webinar? Oops. Inbox. I have so many inboxes from these. Okay, there we go. Now I can just send this. And what happens is we will grab the attachments from these emails. And here's an important note. These will land in your inbox, but we're only grabbing the attachment. We're only able to grab emails that have attachments and store those attachments. We're not going to store the body of the email yet. There's some R&D we're doing about being able to process the email body, but for now it's just attachments. So when you forward an email, if there's no attachment on it, you might get a return message from Trustworthy saying, hey, we couldn't find an attachment. And then effectively what will happen here is those life insurance records will land inside Trustworthy. They'll get analyzed by Autopilot. They'll come up with a plan as to what to do with them. Email to inbox is something that's really great as far as like getting those things out of your email. It's a great place to start. Obviously with Trustworthy is let's go find those items, just start forwarding them into Trustworthy. I get this all the time where I'll get like a utility bill. I'll forward it into Trustworthy, and then it'll land in my inbox. Then I'll go file it into a folder on the property called utility bills. Okay. And this works in exactly the same way. It's like if it's a net new insurance policy, we're going to create a space in your insurance area for it. You can drag this file then to the policy block, and it's going to try and autofill any items that go with it. So it's going to pull in all these items. It's going to link it up to, David Reynolds, to a provider, and then you can give it a better name. Okay, there's a few other options. We won't get into them, but I want to jump into some of these questions. There's a Chrome extension. The Chrome extension is great for things like pulling data out of an email. Like if you're going through a bunch of email messages and you have the Chrome extension riding beside you, it's going to allow you to pull files out of emails that you're looking at. If you're on the Gmail web app, you can save them to your inbox. It can also do things like grab a screenshot of something as well. So there's different options. Like if you're looking at a web page, you can grab a screenshot and it'll send that into Trustworthy as well. So in the future, you'll see more functionality around the Chrome extension around searching items and autofilling forms. But for now, it's a great tool to help you get more data in. Let's take a pause for a minute, and I want to jump into some questions probably because I see them piling up in here.
Yes, we have several.
Before we do, I just want to say if you were buying or selling a home, take that email ID from Trustworthy and give it to your realtor, give it to your title company, give it to everyone else and say, please copy this email, my Trustworthy email, on anything that you send me, because they always send emails with PDFs attached. The home inspector, the city inspector, like so many emails that you get in one of these transactions. Or if you have a business, another one that could work. We sold a home this year, and just everything arriving in my Trustworthy inbox was so much easier than having to figure out, like, oh, did I already save this from email to a folder? It just automatically, everything landed in the inbox. It was easy to file as part of the closing docs, and we created a folder, just dragged everything in. And so now we have everything completely dialed in. It made that whole transaction so much easier. You can use that in a lot of parts of your life, but it's particularly helpful in buying or selling a home, where there's just so much documentation coming over a period of time. Let's take some questions. Taylor, What do we got?
So Robert sent us a couple questions. We answered two of them for you, Robert, so hopefully you were able to get the answers you were looking for. But one, will I be able to store videos on the dashboard?
Let's talk about, videos is an interesting one. So you used to be able to store videos. The thing is, we don't have a video player. So you can put the video in there, but you won't be able to play it back through our UI. You'd have to download the video to watch it. So we're not the greatest like gallery type tool for, you can put photos, of course, and things like that, and you can view those photos. Videos, we don't let you view. You'll have to download them. One day, perhaps we'll have a video player that lets you stream the videos so you can watch them from Trustworthy. I can't upload those videos now, but that's something I'll look at. You should be able to do that. That's something on our end that we'll look at as far as
what most people do is they will create a password to their photo manager, whether it's Google or Apple or something else. And so the files aren't living in Trustworthy, but you're sort of pointing to the place where they live. And that could be anywhere, but that's what most people do for photos and video collections or music collections or something of that nature, is they create that pointer to, here's where they live, here's the URL, here's the login for those memory items.
Amazing. So moving on, Coco asks, living in a remote area means cell coverage and internet are not a given. Is there an option to print a report?
Not currently, there isn't. There's an export option, of course, where you can go and export your data. That's under settings, and there's export data. What it does, it creates a zip of all the files that you've uploaded. However, what you're describing is something that's in our backlog as a roadmap item we want to work on as a team, is to create a printable version of Trustworthy, something that you can update on some regularity, to put it in a binder or whatnot. Think of it like a table of contents and pages for each section, as well as the file exports that go with it. So right now you can print like pages one at a time or files one at a time if you want, but you can't print the entirety of Trustworthy. But this is an idea that we think is great. We just haven't got to it from our roadmap. items. So you'll see some news on that in the future.
Thanks, Kyle. Kenneth asks, how secure is my data?
Yeah, this is a great question, Kenneth. We get this a lot. Let me just say, as a person who signs a lot of the checks, this is the single biggest investment area for Trustworthy from the beginning and ongoingly. And it's a fundamental part of the Trustworthy brand and brand promise is keeping your information secure and private. You've seen Kyle talk a little bit at some of the ways in terms of the things you'd expect. You know, we demand a robust password before you sign in. You have to have multi-factor authentication set up very quickly in your experience. We don't let you progress in the experience without that because it's such a great additional layer. Think of the onion and the layers of security that we offer. Multi-factor authentication is a great one. We support all kinds of multi-factor from biometrics to even physical security keys. If you want something like a YubiKey, we can support that. So you can have as much multi-factor authentication as you want. And it's really great. You have to have it. Beyond encryption, everything's encrypted end to end as well. We have some secret sauce in terms of the technology that we've implemented. It's called tokenization, and what it means when we looked at the level of security that we wanted to feel comfortable putting our own information in Trustworthy, this is something we had to have, and no one else has it because it's expensive to implement and it's difficult. So tokenization, essentially what that is, the analogy for that, what that is we take your really secure information and we replace it with a index or a hash token, meaning that even if we were to have a breach, the actual information could not be retrieved. Only you can retrieve that. You're the holder to those tokens in your account. So tokenization is another great layer on the onion of additional security. It's expensive to implement, but we have it, and so you should feel good knowing that. Beyond the things that we do, the sort of technology that we implement to make your information secure, it's not just us saying we're secure. We have compliance certifications that we've earned, and we earn them every year, meaning we go through rigorous audits with third-party auditors to look at all the controls that we have in place, to look at all the practices that we have in place as a company, to look at all the training and culture that we have in place to ensure that your information is secure and private. So we have things like SOC 2, SOC 3, GDPR compliance, which is a privacy standard that is beyond what the United States demands. But because we have international customers, we need to meet that privacy standard. We have CCPA. We have all these compliances and certifications where there are third parties validating that we're doing the right things to keep your information private and secure. Beyond that, obviously, we have built a culture of security and privacy in our company. So everything that we build, there's a rigorous review of like, is this code, is this language, is this policy in line with our brand, and are we doing the right things for our members? And I think the other big element, obviously, is our business model is aligned with keeping your information private and secure. We're never going to be in a situation where you're wondering, like, is Trustworthy selling my data? We will never do that. Again, the arbiter of your information is you. Only you can decide who you want to share your data with. So hopefully that's a sufficient answer. We have this more in-depth explanation of where we share, we're as transparent as we can be about all the practices and things that we do to keep your information private and secure. At the very top of our homepage, trustworthy.com, click on security. There's pretty good detailed explanations of things there. If you have more questions, happy to answer them.
Amazing. Thanks, Nat. Moving on, Steve has a couple questions, but his first one is the integration with Bitwarden. Can I launch apps contained in Bitwarden directly from Trustworthy?
Yeah, let's jump into this. So we do have a passwords category in Trustworthy. I would consider us a password manager light. We're not the same as Bitwarden. We're not like 1Password. We're not going to autofill passwords for you or help you create complex passwords. We don't actually have an integration with Bitwarden. You'll see an option where it allows you to define which password manager you use. This is essentially the master password to the passwords that you're defining here. You're running your own separate password manager. And if that's the case and you want to share some details about how people could access that in the case of your passing, you could store that information here. I use all of these because I have to test all the different password managers to make sure they work with Trustworthy. So Bitwarden I've used. We don't actually integrate with it. Password manager integration is something we've been considering, but we haven't chosen a partner for that yet. It's a good practice for everyone out there to get a password manager. And it's a meaningful way to manage everything that you've got. Make sure you have MFA on your password manager.
Yeah. I will say we've been shocked at how many people don't have a password manager yet. And so them adopting our password manager Lite is a good increment. But we still recommend that, if you have a lot of passwords, use a password manager like 1Password or Bitwarden or another reputable one. There's some not reputable ones out there.
Yes. Thanks. So Jessica asks about any stories that we can share about someone successfully recovering documents in Trustworthy after disaster. So
glad you asked. We have this great case study that's brand new on our website. I think if you go to the homepage, there's a banner at the top. This is just one that we know about. This is Jeremy in LA, who lost his entire home burned down in the Altadena fires in LA earlier this year. So he shared that he had Trustworthy. He's been a customer since 2022. Very fortunate in that he had his documents all backed up and Trustworthy. So not only was he able to leave his home quickly, knowing that he didn't have to collect important documents before he left, so an added safety factor for him and his family. But I think the big side is the recovery process. He described it as like having 2 full-time jobs, working with insurance companies, with government, local government, and federal government, state entities, to go through the process of rebuilding and recovering everything in his house and his home. Was so much easier and faster for him because he had everything dialed in and Trustworthy. So that's a great, relevant, recent one from just this year. We have lots of other customer references, but this one is one where we just invested some time in creating a really nice video, and you can watch that. I think it's about 4 or 5 minutes on our website.
Yes, great story. Definitely a bit of a tearjerker, that one. Okay, Coco is asking, is there a way to remove a reminder if it's not needed in an item?
Sometimes. And let me talk about this briefly. So let's say, for example, this vehicle I had with a vehicle registration. If I didn't want the reminder on that, one thing I could do is to remove or change my registration date, and that will remove that reminder. Some reminders, though, some areas will create reminders automatically. A good example is like legal. If I was to create, a will in here, it's going to create a reminder on this document to review this on an annual basis. We cannot remove these reminders yet. It's in our roadmap of something to update to allow reminders to have a lot more flexibility, to allow you to unsubscribe to certain types of reminders, to change lead times and recurrence patterns. So some areas you won't be able to. Passwords are a good example. Legal documents is going to generate these reminders that you can't remove. If it's something that you don't want to be notified of, you could just get a bit click happy, set it way out to the future, and then it's not going to bug you for a while. This will change in the future. We know it's not ideal.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. Okay, Steve is asking about sort of our status as a company. Are we startup? How long have we existed? What's our user base like? Things like that.
Yeah, Steve, we've existed since 2019. We started operating in March of 2020, which is memorable because it's pandemic era. We're very well supported by some fantastic investors and our own revenue. So yeah, we're solvent. We're planning to be around for all our lifetimes and beyond. Which is an interesting note because we really think of Trustworthy as a multi-generational product. We already see signs of that. People, some families have purchased Trustworthy for 3 or 5 or 10 or 20 years across multiple households in their family. And that's a signal on, yes, we understand what we're doing here. We're investing. This is going to be the system of record for our family, for this generation, for the next generation and beyond. And you can see how you might pass on your Trustworthy account to the next generation. They make that part of their system, and it just continues. So we think about longevity a lot. We think about investing for the future a lot, and making sure that families are supported throughout generations.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. So Robert and Steve's questions are kind of similar in the how is data backed up and how can I access that backup? And Steve is asking, he worked on downloading his zip file, but it was empty. So wondering if we can walk through that, Kyle.
Yeah, if you have not uploaded any files into Trustworthy, your zip file will be empty. There won't be any data. We only allow you to export the files. Like if I go and put in location of original on here, that data is not going to be downloaded. It will only download a file if I've uploaded it. We know that that's not ideal. Now, if you do have files uploaded and they haven't been included in that zip, what I would do is go to your help and have a chat with support and see if you can open a ticket, and we'll dig into that and see if we can investigate exactly why that happened. As far as other backups, you can't do a point in time backup on your own. It's something that we control backups on our end. We just did a database restore test, something we're doing frequently in different regions in case we have to fail over. We're in charge of backing up your data. We keep redundant data sets in different geographies in case something goes on. Again, that data is tokenized. So most of the data in that database is really boring. There's just arbitrary tokens in there. So you don't have control over restoring data. You can always re-upload files to Trustworthy or delete items and re-upload, but there's no restore on your end of data.
Great. I know we are at time here, but do want to get through some of these last few questions. Connie is asking if we can demonstrate how legacy contact gets access once granted, assuming someone passes away.
Right. A couple things. There's a process we have internally. So your legacy access person, when they accept the invite, will get a page like this. The parts where it's just like a comma and they're blanks, this will say their name when they click on it, it'll say your name. So John invited you as a legacy access collaborator for John's account. And this will step them through the information they need to know and what their role is. Effectively, what happens is there's a manual process on our end where you go through support channels to provide a death certificate or some sort of evidence. Those will go through our team to verify authenticity and stuff like that. Then we'll put that person through an identity verification process, which is done online to prove that they are who they say they are. Assuming that's all clear, there's like a cooling off period where we'll reach out to other collaborators in your account to verify that legacy access person. And then we'll start to open up access to the account for them. But it is a process that's done pretty manually, except for the identity verification. We're involved, and other members of our team are involved to verify things to make sure that we're granting access to the right person.
Great. Thank you. Steve is asking if there's any limit to how much data you can have in an account.
There is not.
Yeah, we don't limit on files or file sizes today. That may change in the future, but for the most part, files are pretty nominal in size, and we didn't want to restrict you on, megabytes or gigabytes.
Okay, last two. Megan is asking, can you rearrange or change the order of a document within a file?
Let's see. Let me show you the things you can rearrange, and then let's do this. Let me go to property, for example, or let's do family IDs. So a couple of things that you can rearrange is, let's say you want to change the order of these tiles. You could effectively drag one to the top, to the front of the list. You can do this on all pages. You can move stuff around. You can't move things within categories. If Emily is actually a pet, I can't move Emily down here. I can just move her within the existing category. Inside a page, let's talk about, let me go into my home for a second. I can move files within this page. Maybe I wanted to move this into a different folder. I can move files around on a page. What I can't do yet is move a file to a different spot in Trustworthy. You'd have to download it and re-upload it to that new spot. We're working on improvements around that. So you can move some stuff around within these confines, but there's some stuff that still needs to be improved as far as moving stuff.
Okay. And as we make updates to the product, we consistently send out notifications of what's been updated, and you can find more information on that on our website at trustworthy.com as well. So stay tuned for more product updates coming from us. Coco, last question. I have key information for an elderly neighbor. Where do I put that info?
Yeah, what I would do is put that in passwords. There's an idea called, when you get into passwords, something called a passcode. It's like passwords are like online things, and then passcodes might be a key code, an entry code, a garage code, a safe code, the PIN for your laptop, the PIN for your phone, the PINs for devices. That's what I would do, is do a passcode, call this, you know, whatever your neighbor is, and you can store it here. Okay.
That's I think I have another one. I think we could have a debate here, Kyle. I think this is because often multiple ways to solve things in Trustworthy. I would probably create an ID for her and put her files in there. That's another way you could solve this. Like, maybe she's not a family member, but maybe she's like, you know, family, you know, just slightly removed. You could create an ID here for Dottie and add her files there and her ID. Would be another way to potentially solve it, depending on how comfortable. She doesn't have to have any access necessarily, but she could. But you could just keep that information for her there. Would be another way.
Yeah. There's tons of different workarounds for Trustworthy and what you can do, especially with the flexibility of adding custom folders to things. There's a lot of stuff that you can do there.
Thank you all so much for submitting your questions. If you have any more questions for the team, please feel free to email us at support@trustworthy.com. If you want more really re-listening to this, we will have a recording available shortly, and we'll send that out. Thank you again so much for your time today, and we hope you have a great time setting up your Trustworthy account.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.